Nearly 8 months into Russia's war in Ukraine, and Europe is shuddering at the thought of what could be a very cold and brutal winter. Russia's severe cuts of oil and gas to Europe has sent European leaders on a desperate hunt for alternative suppliers. And that is where Africa comes in. Earlier this year, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz was in gas-rich Senegal, making an intense push for supplies. Italy just signed a $4 billion gas agreement with Algeria. And European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen recently visited Egypt to seek more cooperation on energy. But while Europe is racing to make these gas deals in Africa, some African leaders are growing more vocal about prioritizing their own energy needs. Some 600 million people in sub-Saharan Africa have long lived without electricity, despite the continent's rich resources. There's also a real fear that European money for gas will not impact the lives of Africans who need it most. Then there is, of course, climate change and international pressure on African nations to pivot away from fossil fuels and focus instead on green energy, even though the entire continent, by the way, emits only about 4% of global greenhouse gases. All of these issues are on the table this week in Cape Town at the Africa Energy Chamber's Energy Week conference. Joining me live now is Rolake Akinkugbe-Filani, a Chamber Advisory Board member. Rolake, so good to see you. Thank you so much for being with us. So Europe is clearly in a crunch here when it comes to gas supplies, when it comes to rising prices. How much is there of an opportunity for Africa to fill the void here left by Russia, and how does it do that?
Great to be here with you again, Zain. I think one of the really big things that must be said is that Europe has been importing LNG from Africa for many years. 2 years ago, Europe was importing almost 20 billion cubic meters of LNG from the continent. So its reliance on exports from other parts of the world has been well known. What is really interesting about the current global disruption to gas supplies is that is obviously reshaping the balance of power in Europe. And there's now a need to diversify, hence all these deals and conversations that are being had in Egypt, in Senegal, in Algeria. But as you mentioned, 600 million people on the continent are without access to stable, affordable, accessible electricity. So Africa also has needs that it needs to prioritize. And the big question here is, how can Africa satisfy its own energy security and independence, but still also provide options to export gas to Europe and further afield? And I think that is a key question stakeholders have been trying to answer here in the Africa Energy Week's annual conference in Cape Town.
Rolake, shouldn't Africa meeting the needs of its own people be priority here?
Yes, most certainly. I think that's a priority. Africa sits on huge amounts of gas reserves. It's the seventh biggest global supplier of gas. That is no mean feat. There is a problem of interconnectedness on the African continent in terms of the infrastructure deficit within gas, but we've seen significant projects and efforts by governments who are creating energy transition plans to centralize the utilization of gas as part of that whole energy transition narrative. So that is absolutely key, particularly for electrification. Now, what you find across the African continent, depending on whether you're a residential consumer or a commercial or industrial consumer, there will be alternative fuels that could also meet your electricity needs. At the very bottom of the pyramid, we know that renewable energy and alternative sources are still important. But for large-scale industrialization, gas is still an important base load source of power. The key challenge has always been how we finance the acceleration of gas development.
All right, so infrastructure is hugely important here. Another issue that I'm sure is being talked about is making sure that these billion-dollar deals, that the money from these billion-dollar deals trickles down to people on the continent who need it the most. We saw, for example, in Mozambique, which has an abundance of natural gas, for example, that wasn't the case, that the poorest people in Mozambique were not benefiting from these massive sort of natural gas deals. How can we ensure that as Europe pivots more to Africa than it has already done in the past, that the people who are at the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder get the sort of benefits from these deals?
Well, Zain, that is a question of governance and economic planning. And I think each African country, which is unique and distinct in its own right, has to take decisions that prioritize those at the bottom of the pyramid, and industrialization. One thing we do know is that gas requires huge amounts of infrastructure investment. It requires a huge distribution network. And a lot of that will need to be enabled by the policy environment. Many governments do have domestic supply obligations that stipulate that if you're a foreign investor or a local investor, you have to set aside a certain amount of your gas for domestic use, whether for petrochemicals, fertilizers, or electrification. And I think there's a question of how African countries can continue to save the windfall from the harnessing of these resources for longer term sustainable economic development. So the real question is, how can we continue to utilize gas in Africa, but the revenues that we then generate from that are plowed back into even more sustainable forms of energy access, such as renewable energy. And I think that is really where you align the commercial imperatives of developing gas with the actual social and developmental imperatives that many governments face on the African continent today.
Right, because I imagine that, of course, given that COP27 is being held in North Africa this year in Egypt, that, of course, climate change is a massive topic of discussion, especially pivoting to green energy. Rolake, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for being with us.